Hello, friends. Welcome to class 3 of Kerala PSC HSA English. Today we will go through Thomas Gray's poem Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard. The poem was written in the graveyard of the church St. Giles in Stock Porches, Buckinghamshire, in 1750. The poem was published on 1751. The elegy pays tribute to the rude forefathers of the hamlet. Hamlet means village, who were poor, neglected, and lived an obscure life. It may also have been written on the death of Gray's best friend, Richard West, in 1742. The poem was originally titled as Stanzas Wrote in a Country Churchyard. After writing the poem, he sent it to his friend Horace Walpole, who popularized the poem. The best known lines from the poem is Full many a flower is born to blush unseen, far from the madding crowd's ignoble strife. The phrase far from the madding crowd has been used by Thomas Hardy as a title of one of his novels. The poem has 32 quatrains and 128 lines. Gray praises the simplicity and honesty of the villagers as virtue that compensate for their lack of wealth, opportunity, and fame. So let's move on to the poem. For convenience, I have divided my class to 4 parts. So I will be discussing 8 stanzas on each part of my class. So first, I am going to discuss on the first 8 lines of the poem. The curfew tolls a knell of parting day. The lowing herd wind slowly over the lea. The ploughman homeward plods his weary way and leaves the world to darkness and to me. The curfew bell, by its continuous ringing, announces that the day has come to an end. The poet draws our attention to the bellowing cattle moving over the open grassland. The ploughman, ending his work for the day, walks towards his home wearily. He's very tired. And the world is left to the enveloping darkness and to the poet to observe the scene. In the phrase, the ploughman homeward plods his weary way, a transferred epithet is used. It is a ploughman who is weary, but the adjective weary is used for the way. Transferred epithet is also known as hyperlage. Now fades the glimmering landscape on the sight, and all the air a solemn stillness holds, save where the beetle wheels his drowning flight, and drowsy tinklings lull the distant folds. Save that from yonder ivy mantled tower, the moping owl does to the moon complain of such as wandering near her secret bower molest her ancient solitary reign. The shining landscape becomes dimmer and dimmer. There is a solemn silence in the air except for the droning sound coming from the wheeling beetle and the subdued sounds from the bells hung around the necks of cattle in distant folds, slowly sending the animals to sleep. And except for the mourning of the owl, having its shelter in the tower covered over with ivy, The owl seems to complain to the moon that her solitary reign in the tower has been disturbed by those wandering near her secret bower. Beneath those rugged elms that yew trees shade, where heaves the turf in many a mouldering heap, each in his narrow cell forever laid, the rude forefathers of the hamlet sleep. The breezy call of incense breathing mom, the swallow twittering from the straw built shed, the cock's shrill clarion or the echoing horn, no more shall rouse them from their lowly bed. Having described the surroundings getting swallowed in darkness, Gray turns to the men lying buried in their graves in the churchyard. The graves are beneath the rugged elms and under the shade of the yew trees. There, each one of the simple, rustic forefathers is laid to rest and sleeps peacefully in his grave. Here, rude means uncultured or unlettered. They don't have any education. So, the graves are noticeable because of many of the mouldering heaps. None of these rustic forefathers will ever rise from their lowly bed. They are incapable of responding to the early morning fresh breeze or the chirping of the swallows from their nest or the sharp sound of the crowing cock. For them, no more the blazing hearth small burn, or busy housewife ply her evening care. No children run to lisp their sire's return, or climb his knees the envied kiss to share. Oft did the harvest their sickle yield, their furrow oft the stubborn glebe has broke. How jocund did they drive their team afield, how bowed the woods beneath their sturdy stroke. Let not ambition mock their useful toil, their homely joys and destiny obscure. Nor grandeur hear with a disdainful smile the short and simple annals of the poor. The fire in the hearth will not be lighted for them. No housewife will anxiously work at their household tools. No children will announce their father's homecoming in their lisping way of speaking or will climb his knees for his sought after kiss in competition with one another. Before they were laid to rest, they harvested their field using the sickle, ploughed the hard ground, and cut furrows, led their teams of oxen happily to the field, and made the woods yield to their sturdy stroke. Even the nature obeyed these, rude forefathers. They toiled and moiled hard. Their work was useful. The wealthy, ambitious people would have no business to mock their honest or hard labor. Their joys were homely, and their own destiny was uncertain and unknown. They had very unpredictable life, obscure life. The poet would not have the wealthy, grand people contemptuously smile at these poor people for the short, simple events that were theirs in their routine life. So, Gray warns the rich not to look down on the poor, as they will all be one day united in death. So, here, ambition and grandeur, these two words have been personified. The ambition and the grandeur stands for ambitious people, rich, wealthy, and proud and grand people. So the poet says that the power of death overtakes the rich and the poor alike.